Whenever I think about the Old and New Testament, it separates in my mind as the Old Testament being a God of wrath and anger and jealousy, and then the New Testament being a God of love and kindness and forgiveness. It can often be difficult to reconcile the Old and New Testament to say, well, how could a God that's going to cause these wars and pick sides and, do all of these terrible things to people that disobey him and go against his law, and then how can the same God be so loving and peaceful and all of these other things that are in what are seemingly in direct contradiction to everything that we've known about God up until this point? This is a struggle that is unique to Christianity. Obviously, in Judaism, this isn't a struggle because Jesus is not considered the Messiah, and unless you're a Messianic Jew, but like in traditional Judaism, Jesus is considered a prophet, sure, but not like the savior of the world. So this is a qualm that is unique to Christianity, and the way that St. Thomas Aquinas defines it here is talking about the testament of the agreement that God has made with us. So in the Old Testament, God promised man temporal prosperity, or like physical prosperity and deliverance from physical losses. So if you obey me, I will ensure your safety and everything like that. And then in the New Testament, God promised man spiritual blessings and deliverance from spiritual losses. And I think that drawing, it's making this covenant, right? And it's through the blood of Christ that, in 1 Corinthians 11, verse 25, this chalice is the New Testament in my blood, which, as I said, as St. Thomas Aquinas says, testament can mean any type of agreement or pact. And then testament also means that it can signify the arrangement of an inheritance among the different heirs, such as a will. So in this sense, in the Old Testament, right, with the inheritance, there were the chosen people, the Israelites. That was who God bestowed his blessings upon, the temporal blessings, everything physical, leading them through the desert to Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey. He protected them in battle. I mean, Samson overcame the Philistines. All of those different stories that we know, right? He kept the kings good, and then when things were disobeyed, things went wrong. And so but the chosen people being the Israelites, who were delivered from Egypt and then continued to seek him. Obviously, we see all kinds of a roller coaster of obedience versus disobedience while Moses is leading them to the promised land. But that's the Old Testament, is this promise of deliverance from those physical things, and the inheritance being to the Israelites. Whereas in the New Testament, we have that deliverance from spiritual blessings, but the will is expanded. It's now not just the Israelites who are under God's protection, who he is willing to sacrifice his life for. He did it for everyone. He did it for the Gentiles. He did it for every single person that walks this earth. His inheritance is available to them. And that's what makes it the New Testament, is that explicit promise of eternal inheritance, which was confirmed by the blood of the death of Christ. And so when he says that this New Testament is in my blood, he has gone forward and sacrificed his body. His blood has been poured out from him so that we may experience that eternal covenant, even if we don't have that by a genetic birthright. And so there are so many things that make the blood of Christ precious. I've mentioned it before. I have a whole video on this channel about Dr. Brent Petre's book, the Jewish Roots of the Eucharist, which goes all into the details of how the blood of Christ is so prevalent. I know Scott Hahn has the fourth cup that he wrote, and I'm just anxiously awaiting for the wine to be offered, the blood of Christ to be offered at Mass again, at more universally, since it was removed during COVID. But the blood of Christ really has a lot to play into when it comes to that sacrificial nature. Anytime in the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, the old agreement, the old inheritance, anytime blood was present, that was that symbol of it was the human's physical signal of saying, this is my sacrifice to you, this is my fattest calf, this is the first fruits of my labor, these, that is what I'm offering you, and it is by their blood that I am indicating my dependence on you and my willingness to do whatever it is that you call me to do. And in the New Testament, that call becomes a more spiritual call because Christ's blood covers it all. And so we no longer have to have that physical blood sacrifice, and we can rather have that spiritual sacrifice where we're sacrificing these desires that we want, that are misaligned with what it is that God has clearly stated he wants for us and from us. And so I think it can be so easy to just say, oh, will this little bit really matter? I think about the spirit of the law, where, if you've given up chocolate for Lent, say you eat chocolate on a daily basis, you don't go and buy chocolate milk and say, well, I'm not eating chocolate. You don't go and kind of find that way around the rule. And if you're giving up alcohol, you don't replace that alcohol with something like chocolate milk. You don't replace that alcohol with something other than God. That is what the sacrifice is for, so that you can grow closer with God. And I think it can just be so easy to say, oh, well, I've done this, I've given up alcohol for 30 days now. Oh, I've given up chocolate. I've given up this. I've given up that for 30 days. A little bit won't hurt. It's really been a long time. I've been pretty committed this Lent, and my spiritual sacrifice has been very prevalent in my life. And it's been the 30 days. That's enough, right, God? I think it can be really easy to do that, for it to feel like a long time. But I'm going to tell you right now, the answer is no. If you've committed to something for Lent, God is wanting you to follow through with that. Jesus couldn't just wander out of the desert when he was feeling done, or, God, wow, I've really been here a long time. I think it's time I go back. Like, there's a very finite reality about how long Jesus was in the desert prior to his crucifixion. And we're called to spiritually die with him in that time. And so I want to encourage you to just continue on in your Lenten sacrifice, whatever that may be, and continue fasting. The Lord, the way that it works, right? Whether it's actualized or not, whether you actually experience what his promise is directly right now, it's at the end. It's when you've pushed through. It's when that fortitude has continued to go. Jesus could have been at the point of death, and obviously people had mercy on him, wanted to have mercy on him right there at the end. And he could have said, I'm done. I'll stop. I'm not the Son of God. He could have denounced it all at any moment during his whole passion. But he went all the way to death. And so if he can do that, the least that we can do is continue to give up whatever menial thing it is that we've decided to sacrifice this Lent. Like, it's nothing in comparison to what he did. So just hold on to that and just keep going. We're doing great. There's just a couple weeks left. And yeah, so just continue to think about the blood of Christ, though, and just that power, and that you are invited into his kingdom. All you have to do is accept that invitation and then learn what it means to be a true disciple of Christ. So God bless you. Enjoy your Friday, and I look forward to chatting with you again tomorrow. Take care.